Ambassador Tay stepped into the massive council chamber, his footsteps echoing across floors that had witnessed 10,000 years of galactic history. The curved walls displayed holographic records of peace treaties, trade agreements, and diplomatic victories. Somewhere in that vast archive were humanity's contributions, small and recent but growing. Earth had joined the Galactic Council 200 years ago. Back then humans were the newcomers, eager and naive. They struggled to understand the unwritten rules that governed council politics. The elder species, the Vexari with their merchant fleets, the Kelthani with their ancient mining guilds, and the Lorn with their banking empires, had watched with amusement as humans stumbled through their first decades. But humans learned quickly. Too quickly, some whispered. Tay had served as Earth's primary ambassador for 15 years. He had mastered the delicate dance of council diplomacy, building relationships with species both powerful and overlooked. He helped establish trade routes that benefited everyone. He mediated disputes that others considered too minor to address. He built hospitals and systems where medical care had been scarce. Other species appreciated his work, especially the smaller ones. The Drayan thanked him for negotiating fair shipping contracts. The Bellicose credited human engineers with saving their failing infrastructure. The Kelith remembered when human doctors had helped them through an epidemic 20 years ago, asking nothing in return. The elder species noticed too, though their reactions were different. Velmoth, the Kelthani trade minister, often spoke to Tay with a tone that mixed respect with warning. His crystalline body would shift to darker colors when humans achieved something remarkable. Today's council session concerned mining rights on 3 human colony worlds. Tay had reviewed the agenda carefully. The colonies, Horizon, New Kyoto, and Greenfield, were home to 15,000 families. Human settlers had spent decades terraforming harsh environments into livable worlds. The mines were modest operations, carefully managed to preserve the ecosystems they had worked so hard to create. The Vexari Consortium wanted those mining rights transferred to them. They argued their technology was superior, their methods more efficient. They had the backing of the Kelthani and Lorn delegations. The vote began. Tay watched as delegate after delegate activated their approval signals. Green lights filled the chamber like stars appearing in an evening sky. 38 votes in favor. 7 against. 2 abstentions. The transfer was approved. Tay rose from his seat, his tablet displaying population data, environmental reports, and economic analyses. High Arbiter, I request reconsideration. These colonies represent. High Arbiter Shelkan raised one aged hand. The Lorn leader had guided the council for 3 centuries. His voice carried the weight of millennia of tradition. The vote is concluded, Ambassador Tay. Surely you understand how the council operates. We function on balance, on give and take. Your species is still learning our ways. But the families living there will be compensated appropriately. The Vexari are honorable. They will ensure proper relocation procedures. This decision benefits the greater galactic economy. You must see the larger picture. Around the chamber, delegates were already moving to the next agenda item. The matter was settled. Discussion was pointless. Tay sat down slowly. Across the chamber, Ambassador Nari from the Bellicose delegation caught his eye. Her expression showed sympathy. She knew what it felt like to be overruled by powers beyond her control. On the shuttle returning to Earth's embassy station, Tay reviewed the voting records. This was the 4th time in 3 years that human interests had been specifically targeted. Always legal. Always justified by economic efficiency or council tradition. Always resulting in human loss. He began drafting his report to President Yuna back on Earth. He chose his words with precision, knowing she would read between the lines. The council did not see humanity as partners. They saw humans as junior members who needed to be reminded of their place. At a reception that evening, Ambassador Jorin of the Drayan found Tay standing alone near an observation window. Your people handle these setbacks with remarkable grace, Jorin said quietly. We have practice, Tay replied, watching ships move through the darkness beyond the glass. Jorin's expression darkened with concern. That worries me, Ambassador. What happens when grace runs out? 3 years passed, then 5, then 10. Each year brought new incidents, each one small enough to justify, each one chipping away at humanity's presence in council space. Dr. Mina received the notice on a cold morning at the Talos 4 research station. Her xenobiology team had been making breakthrough discoveries about cross-species cellular interactions. Their work was months ahead of similar projects run by elder species. The notice was brief and formal. Her team was being expelled due to concerns about methodology compatibility. She had 2 weeks to pack up 5 years of research and leave. When she protested to the Council Oversight Committee, they smiled politely and suggested she had misunderstood Council research protocols. The Vexari team that replaced her published her preliminary findings 6 months later under their own names. Ambassador Hyuk faced a different problem. He had spent 2 years establishing a cultural center on Velnora, a beautiful facility where humans shared music, art, and literature with other species. Children came to learn Earth languages. Artists collaborated on projects that blended different cultural traditions. It was everything the Council claimed to support. The shutdown notice cited zoning violations. The building, they said, exceeded height restrictions by 0.7 meters. When Hyuk pointed out that the Lorne embassy 3 blocks away was twice as tall, the zoning official shrugged. Different district, different rules. The cultural center closed within a month. The building became a Vexari trade office. The shipping routes disappeared next. Human logistics companies had spent decades mapping efficient corridors through dangerous space. The Kelthani Expanse route, developed by Captain Sora's navigation team, reduced transit time by 30%. It saved fuel, time, and money for everyone who used it. The Council declared it restricted for security reasons. The official replacement route, managed by Vexari contractors, was slower and cost twice as much. Human shipping companies lost most of their long-haul business overnight. When they complained, the Council explained that security must come first. The fact that no security threats had been identified in that sector for 50 years was irrelevant. Each incident stood alone as defensible, reasonable, legal. But together they formed a picture that even the most diplomatic human could no longer ignore. Tay spent long evenings reviewing incident reports from across Council space. Human researchers expelled. Human trade agreements terminated. Human embassy staff recalled on technicalities. The pattern was undeniable now. One evening Velmoth found him in a quiet observation deck. The Kelthani's crystalline form reflected starlight as he approached. They stood in silence for a moment before Velmoth spoke. Your people advanced too quickly, Ambassador. You arrive with primitive rockets and within 2 centuries you compete with civilizations 10,000 years old. Can you understand how threatening that appears? Tay turned to face him. We only want to contribute. To be partners. That is exactly the problem. Your contributions are too valuable. Too disruptive. Velmoth's colors shifted through patterns suggesting genuine regret. The Council was stable before humans arrived. It will be stable again after you remember your proper place. The breaking point came on Tuesday. The plague on Keleth 7 started as a routine medical emergency. The Keleth government sent distress calls to every Council member. Earth's hospital ship, the Mercy Dawn under Captain Sora's command, responded immediately. They jumped to Keleth space within hours, medical teams prepared and ready. They arrived to find a Council blockade. The Vexari patrol captain's message was clear and cold. You are denied entry. Vexari Medical Consortium has secured exclusive treatment rights. Any interference constitutes a treaty violation. Sora couldn't believe what she was hearing. People are dying down there. Our scanners show the infection spreading rapidly. We have treatments ready now. The contracts are legal. Vexari treatments will arrive within 3 weeks. 3 weeks? Thousands will die. That is unfortunate. But the law is clear. For 17 days Mercy Dawn held orbit. Sora and her medical staff watched helplessly as their scanners tracked the plague's spread. They intercepted desperate transmissions from hospitals on the surface. Children dying. Medical workers collapsing from exhaustion. Mass graves being dug in city parks. The medicine that could save them sat in Mercy Dawn's cargo holds and used. When Vexari treatments finally arrived, 8,000 Keleth were dead. The treatments worked eventually. They were also expensive, patented, and extremely profitable. Vexari Medical Consortium's stock price increased 14% that quarter. Captain Sora resigned the day the quarantine lifted. Her final report contained one sentence that would echo through human space. I became a doctor to save lives, but the Council prevented me from doing my job. President Yuna read that report 3 times. Then she called every human ambassador and colony governor to an emergency meeting. 14 hours later, she made a single quiet announcement that would change everything. President Yuna's message was brief and polite. Humanity was taking a sabbatical from Council affairs to focus on internal matters. They thanked the Council for 2 centuries of partnership and wished everyone peace and prosperity. No accusations. No anger. Just a simple goodbye. High Arbiter Shell Khan read the announcement and smiled faintly. They are pouting like children, he told his advisors. They will return soon enough when they realize how much they need us. But humans did not pout. They simply left. Within the first week, trade agreements began expiring. Human companies did not renew them. Vexari merchants who had grown wealthy selling human technology suddenly found their suppliers gone. Markets that had depended on human goods discovered empty shelves. Requests for renewal were politely declined with the same message. Humanity was focusing inward now. Dr. Mina packed her laboratory on Talos 4. She carefully cataloged every piece of equipment, every data file, every sample. The Vexari researchers who had stolen her work watched nervously as she prepared to leave. They had questions about procedures they did not fully understand. She answered politely but shared nothing beyond what was already in official reports. 2 months after her departure, their entire research project stalled. They could not replicate her results. Dr. Juan closed the agricultural station on Velnora. Professor Day retrieved his archaeological team from SH Lore Prime. Dr. Inho shut down the medical training facility on Drayan. One by one, human scientists gathered their work and went home. They left buildings intact and equipment functioning, but the knowledge that made everything work left with them. The logistics collapse came next. Human shipping companies had handled 40% of all interspecies trade. They had optimized routes, standardized loading procedures, and built transfer stations that everyone used. When they withdrew, gaps appeared immediately across the galaxy. Transit times doubled in major shipping lanes. Costs increased by 50%. Goods piled up in warehouses because no one else had the systems to move them efficiently. The Kelthani tried to fill the void, but their methods were outdated. The Vexari raised their prices to compensate for inefficiency. Smaller species simply could not afford to ship goods anymore. Ambassador Tay walked through Earth's embassy station one final time. The halls were empty now. The medical clinic that had treated any species free of charge was dark. The gardens where different peoples had gathered to share meals and stories were abandoned. Plants were already beginning to wilt without care. Ambassador Jarin found him standing among the dying flowers. You are really leaving. All of you. Yes, Tay said simply. This will hurt more than you know. More than they know. Jarin gestured toward the distant council chamber. My people depend on human mediators. When our disputes with the Kelthani escalate, who will stand between us? Tay was quiet for a long moment. I am sorry truly. But we cannot hold together an institution that works against us. We cannot mediate for those who refuse to treat us as equals. So you leave us to face the consequences. We leave you to make your own choices, Tay said gently. 6 months after the announcement, 90% of humanity's presence in council space had vanished. 3 people remained at the embassy to maintain minimal diplomatic contact. Everyone else had gone home. Earth's colonies flourished in isolation. New Kyoto doubled its agricultural output without council regulations limiting production. Horizon's mines became more efficient without oversight committees questioning every decision. Greenfield developed new technologies without needing to share patents with council review boards. The Sol system became a center of innovation. Humans built new ships with designs that did not require council approval. They established colonies beyond council borders. They pushed their technology forward without interference or theft. In council space, the silence grew louder each day. The minor species noticed first. The bellicose economy began struggling without human technical support. The Drayan lost their voice in council debates without human advocates speaking for them. The Kelith mourned their dead and remembered the human ship that had wanted to save them. Ambassador Nari sent 7 requests for human assistance. Each received the same polite response. Humanity was no longer involved in council affairs. Perhaps the Vexari Consortium or Kelthani Guild could help instead. Both demanded fees the bellicose could not afford. Within a year, 12 minor species faced serious economic problems. The systems humanity had built, the services they had provided, the problems they had quietly solved, all of it had been invisible until it was gone. And in the council chamber, the elder species were beginning to realize they had made a terrible mistake. Year 1 after humanity's withdrawal brought inconvenience. Year 2 brought disruption. Year 3 brought crisis. The plague returned to Kelith, 7 with terrible fury. The Vexari treatment that had cost so many lives and earned such profits proved defective. A mutation of the original disease swept through the population, and this time the expensive medicine did nothing. Vexari scientists had rushed their research, cutting corners to beat human competitors to market. Now they scrambled desperately to develop a new cure without access to the human medical databases they had previously stolen from. Thousands more Kelith died while Vexari researchers struggled. The Kelith government filed formal complaints with the council, demanding justice and compensation. The complaints went nowhere. The contracts had been legal. The Vexari were protected by council law. On the former human colony worlds, Kelthani mining operations were failing spectacularly. The mines that had seemed so valuable were now losing money every month. Equipment broke down constantly. Tunnels collapsed. Production dropped to barely 30% of projected output. Velmoth, now promoted to sector administrator, ordered a full investigation. The results were humiliating. Human engineers had been implementing dozens of small innovations that made the difficult mining conditions manageable. They had understood the geology in ways the Kelthani did not. Without those experts and their knowledge, the mines were worthless holes in the ground consuming resources. The Kelthani tried hiring human consultants. They offered generous contracts and formal apologies. Every inquiry received the same polite response: "Thank you for your interest, but our engineers are committed to projects within human space." The SH Lorne economic empire began cracking at its foundations. For 3,000 years, SH Lorne banks had dominated galactic finance through careful predictions and stable growth. But their models had assumed human participation would continue. Human innovation had created new markets and opportunities that drove consistent expansion. When humans withdrew, they took their massive consumer base and creative economy with them. SH Lorne banks had extended enormous credit based on growth projections that were now worthless. Interest rates skyrocketed as panic spread. Credit markets froze solid. 3 minor species defaulted on massive debts they could never repay. The SH Lorne Banking Authority demanded immediate payment, but there was no money. The debtors had nothing left to give. High Arbiter Shel Khan called an emergency session. The council chamber filled with angry voices and desperate accusations. Order barely held. The humans sabotaged us, a Vexari delegate shouted, his voice shaking with rage. They built dependencies deliberately and then abandoned us to collapse. Ambassador Jarin rose slowly. His voice was cold and precise. The humans built nothing that required their permanent presence. They shared knowledge freely. They trained our people. They offered genuine partnership. We took everything they gave us and repaid them with contempt. This crisis is not their fault. It is ours alone. The chamber erupted in furious argument. Delegates screamed at each other while the High Arbiter called uselessly for order. Meanwhile, on New Kyoto, Dr. Mina published a revolutionary breakthrough in xenobiology. Her research, conducted entirely within human space without council interference, transformed understanding of how different species cells could safely interact. The applications were limitless. It could save millions of lives across the galaxy. She released it freely to all human colonies and independent settlements. She did not share it with the council. When a journalist asked why, her answer was simple and devastating: "I am no longer part of council research programs. This is human work for human communities." The message could not have been clearer. Humanity was not withholding knowledge out of revenge or spite. They simply had no reason to share anymore. The council had severed that relationship themselves. The final breaking point came in year 5. The Kelthani and Vexari, both struggling economically and politically unstable, turned on each other. The mining rights they had taken from humans became the focus of their bitter dispute. Small arguments became battles. Battles became war. The council tried desperately to intervene. They assembled committees, held peace talks, and issued formal resolutions. But the systems they depended on had been built or maintained by human experts. The legal frameworks, the mediation protocols, the neutral facilitators, all were gone. "Where is Ambassador Tay?" someone asked during a failed negotiation. He could resolve this in a week. But Tay was teaching at a university in Seoul, living peacefully on Earth. He had declined 3 requests to return. His answer never changed: "I am retired from council service. I wish you success in finding solutions." The war spread like fire across council space and no one could stop it. 10 years after humanity's departure, the Galactic Council was barely recognizable. The institution that had maintained peace for 10,000 years was crumbling into dust. The Vexari and Kelthani war had ended not through negotiation but through sheer exhaustion. Both empires were broken shadows of their former glory. Their economies lay in ruins. Their people were angry and demanding answers from leaders who had led them into disaster. The SH Lorne Banking Authority collapsed entirely, taking 12 minor species economies down with it. The institution that had guaranteed financial stability for 3 millennia disintegrated in less than 2 years. Investigations revealed massive corruption built on assumptions that prosperity would continue forever. High Arbiter Shel Khan resigned in disgrace. His successor lasted only 6 months before her own people recalled her in shame. The council chamber still existed, but it was mostly empty now. Species maintained only small token presences. Real power had shifted to a new organization built by the minor species who had been ignored for so long. They called it the Free Worlds Alliance. It operated on principles of equality, transparency, and mutual support. It looked remarkably similar to the systems humanity had tried to establish before being pushed out. Ambassador Jirin, now representing the Drayan in the Free Worlds Alliance, traveled to New Kyoto for a diplomatic conference. Walking through human space felt surreal after so many years away. The colony had transformed into a magnificent city. Gardens reached toward artificial skies. Children played safely in beautiful parks. Everything hummed with prosperity and peace. He met Ambassador Tay at a small tea house overlooking the city center. Tay poured tea with the same graceful precision Jirin remembered from decades ago. "You have done remarkably well," Jirin said, accepting the cup. "We have been fortunate," Tay replied quietly. "Fortunate?" Jirin laughed bitterly. "You were wise. We were fools. You were trapped in a broken system that rewarded the wrong behaviors. You made choices that seemed rational within that framework. And now we live with the consequences." Jirin sipped his tea. ASH Lorne historian published a comprehensive study recently. She analyzed all council records from the 2 centuries of human participation. Tay waited silently. Humans mediated 78% of all successful dispute resolutions. You provided 42% of all medical aid to minor species. You created 36% of all new technologies adopted by the Council. Jirin's voice dropped to a whisper. In exchange, you received only 3% of leadership positions. And you faced 61% of all punitive actions taken by the Council. The numbers hung in the air between them like an accusation. "We took everything you built," Jirin continued. "We used your expertise, your compassion, your innovations. We gave you nothing but contempt in return. The Council's collapse was not caused by your departure. It was simply revealed by it. You were the only thing holding together a structure that was already rotten. We did not want it to end that way," Tay said softly. "We wanted genuine partnership." "I know. That makes it so much worse. You would have saved us if we had simply let you." Jirin finished his tea. The Free Worlds Alliance would welcome humanity's participation. As complete equals. Full voting rights, full representation. The systems we are building now are based on models you tried to implement years ago. We finally learned from our mistakes. Tay considered this carefully. "I will present your offer to President Yuna. But Jirin, you should understand something important. Humanity is not waiting for anyone's permission anymore. We are building our own future successfully. If we choose to rejoin galactic society, it will be because we want to, not because we need to." "I understand completely. That is exactly how it should be." 50 years after humanity's departure, the formal invitation finally arrived. The Free Worlds Alliance, now comprising 73 species, requested Earth's participation in their new galactic federation. The terms offered everything humanity had once asked for: genuine equality, complete transparency, and mutual respect. The vote on Earth was surprisingly close. Many humans preferred continued isolation. But eventually the decision was made to engage again, carefully, with clear boundaries and firm conditions. Ambassador Nari, now the Alliance's first secretary, personally welcomed the human delegation. She was much older now, but her eyes remained bright with hope. "Thank you for coming back to us," she said warmly. The human ambassador, a young woman named Sola, smiled kindly. "We are not coming back. We are beginning something entirely new. With you. As equals." "Yes. As equals." At the evening reception, a young Vexari student approached Ambassador Sola nervously. His crystalline form shifted with uncertain colors as he gathered courage to speak. "Ambassador, may I ask a question?" "Of course. I have studied the history extensively. The way the old council treated your people. The systematic marginalization. The crisis with the Keleth plague." His colors flickered with genuine confusion. "Why did you not fight back? Why did you not seek revenge? You could have destroyed us when we were weakest. Instead you simply left." Sola was quiet for a moment, watching the peaceful gathering around them. Species that had once been bitter enemies now mingled as friends. We did not need to destroy you, she finally answered. We simply stopped doing for you what you refused to appreciate. We allowed you to face the natural consequences of taking essential contributors for granted. But you could have gloated. You could have refused all future contact. You could have watched us suffer. That would have made us like the old council elite. Petty. Vindictive. Small. Sola looked at the young student with gentle eyes. We left because we valued ourselves enough to refuse to stay where we were not valued. We returned because you finally built something genuinely worth being part of. Not for revenge. For possibility. The student's crystals shifted through colors suggesting deep thought. We were always taught that power means dominance. That strength requires control over others. No, Sola said softly. True strength is knowing when to walk away. True power is being so essential that your absence speaks louder than any threats ever could. And true wisdom is understanding that you never need anyone's permission to thrive and succeed. She gestured to the gathering of species around them, all engaged in genuine respectful dialogue. You learned that lesson the extremely hard way. The only question that matters now is this: will you remember it? The young Vexari bowed deeply in the human style he had carefully learned. We will try, Ambassador. We will sincerely try. Sola watched representatives from dozens of species engage in real conversations as equals. No political theater. No power games. Just honest dialogue among partners who had finally learned to respect each other. Humanity had not won through military force or economic dominance. They had simply refused to participate in their own diminishment. In doing so, they had taught the galaxy its most valuable lesson. Respect cannot be demanded or forcibly taken. It can only be freely given, and only to those who respect themselves enough to walk away from those who will not give it. The old council was dead. Something infinitely better had grown from its ashes. And humanity had helped build it, but only after the galaxy learned what happened when you took them for granted.